Thanks. I think, he said it perfectly, and I think we're done here. So that was great. Thanks for having us. This place is beautiful. Thanks for the invitation. And, we got a great panel up here. It's so important that in this environment and this climate of relationships, it's paramount. I mean, everybody has their political views. Everybody has, as Bob spoke to, that Purple Project seems interesting. It's like, how does everybody fall? But at the end of the day, whether you fall left or right, or it's blue or red, I think everybody would agree up here that it's about the green, right? I mean, we all have budgets to hit. We're not for nonprofits. So, I'll just introduce myself, Jason Tate. I oversee all of the indirect and programmatic partnerships and relationships at Digital First Media. Some of our key properties are like the Denver Post, the Boston Herald, the Mercury News, Orange County Register, to name a few. We've got about 80 properties, and we do about 150-ish million page views a month. So not small potatoes, but a lot to work with. And every day is a struggle. Every day is fun. Every day is, at the end of the day, if I have a couple good conversations with advertisers or marketers, it was a good day. And if the money comes in at the end of the day, that's what matters. So I will let each person introduce themselves, and we got a couple topics to talk about, and we'll keep it pretty light.
I'm Nick Ames. I'm the director of programmatic advertising at McClatchy. We have publications such as the Miami Herald, Sacramento Bee, Kansas City Star, Fort Worth Star Telegram, and I've been with the company for 14 years.
My name's Calabrese. I promise I don't smoke 2 packs a day. My allergies.
Liar.
Allergies have gotten the better of me, too much nature. I am the sales lead for Programmatic at SheKnows Media. SheKnows Media is a leading women's lifestyle platform. We are a mission-based company. We are laser focused on helping women discover, create, and share content that celebrates their passions. SheKnows is a portfolio of premium sites and brands. Some notable titles include SheKnows.com, Stylecaster.com, as well as the blog Her Influencer Network.
Hey all, I'm Marcus Witte, so I head up integrated marketing, demand generation, digital ad strategy, and client solutions for SourceMedia. SourceMedia is B2B publication or publisher. We have about 18 different properties. They range from financial services. American Banker is our flagship. It's been around longer than the New York Times. It's a real American institution. And we range everything from the financial service space to accounting to benefits to mortgages, et cetera. So, and really, our strategy around programmatic, even as we were having this conversation, kind of shifts from a lot of what they are doing. Ours is more about packaging up our first-party data and finding ways that we can actually extend our audiences out there and command higher CPMs.
Cool. So we'll, speaking of CPMs, so like one of the first topics we kind of chatted about was, defining rates and a rate card. Like, is there such thing as a rate card in the programmatic world? And when I was at Scripps, I actually built the rate card for the direct sales teams. I mean, we had 450-ish sellers out in the fields in the local markets, but the rates that they're out selling to the local agencies and the local window builders and the local, John Smith Fords and whatever, their rates that they were selling on basically were dependent on what I could get to either backfill in the old remnant days. A lot of people throw around the word remnant. I absolutely hate that word. It's all inventory. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's what you sell that widget for, right? I mean, it's supply and demand. It's yield management. It's not difficult. So drop the floors. If people are out trying to get the $10, $12, $15 rates for display, you're an idiot. It's not going to happen unless you throw the data. So I'll kick it back to Marcus, sorry, about rates and rate cards. My stance is fill the inventory at any rate possible, right? But he's got a probably a similar approach, but there's a lot of cost around data, and it's like how you package that up and sell that back to the advertiser. So I think what you guys are doing is awesome, and I think we want to hear more about it.
All right. Yeah, so we unfortunately don't have a fucktillion impressions that we can kind of throw around. We're a B2B, we're a B2B site. So we deal with smaller niche audiences, right? I mean, we're dealing with bankers. There are only so many bankers in this world. However, when you look at our audience profile across our entire portfolio, we have the C-suite of every single Fortune 500 company in our database. So that becomes incredibly powerful. And so really, what's been great about us is we're a legacy print publication. Where print is great, yes, it's declining revenues, but guess what? It is an amazing way to mine first-party data. People have to give you their information in order to subscribe. So we implemented, and I know probably everybody here has heard about Customer Data Platform, CDP. There's the Blueconics, Lytics, OneCounts of the world that are now helping people sort of aggregate and manage audiences. We have that as well. It's not an end-all, be-all type solution. But really what it's allowed us to do is aggregate our audiences. It's got these machine learning capabilities which get all of our users down to a single source ID. So that's important because if somebody attended a conference, if they're an email subscriber, if they are coming in organically, if they've come in through the social space, we're able to track all of that activity. And what we're doing is we're not only looking at that search behavior in our own portfolio, but we're also looking at, we have another data partnership with a group called Bombora where we're able to see externally, and we can really kind of start to take audiences that are hyper relevant to our advertisers and identify outside of, we call it account-based marketing, but it's really audience-based marketing. So our goal is to take that customer data platform backed by third-party data. We hygiene all of our data with groups like Dun & Bradstreet, Discovery Databases, MyEdge, a whole bunch of third-party data that's helping us to also really kind of hygiene that first-party data and then group those audiences up into first-party audience segments. And what we're doing is account-based marketing in the programmatic space. So all we're doing is saying this group is sharing keywords that you guys are out actively buying, which means they're probably in market. These corporations, the Coca-Colas of the world, we can see they're in market. We group all of those individuals up, and what we're essentially doing is not only targeting them on our site, and it's all first-party audience. So what we are saying is, I know their name, their title, their email, their contact information. I know they're coming in from this corporate IP address, and I know they're in market for your solution. That becomes a very, very powerful platform that you can now approach advertisers with and say, let's group those individuals up. We're going to target them on our site, and we act as an SSP and a DSP. So what we do is we work with another group called Adaptive Intelligence. We do a first-party data match. We actually go out and over the course of 5 to 7 days, we do a match against our single source IDs from our customer data platform. We then package those up, and now we're going out to the AppNexus universe and targeting them off portfolio. So when you talk about a rate card, we're commanding $40 CPMs with that. Now keep in mind, we're B2B, so we're getting $100 CPMs direct sold on our site. And what we're really doing is saying, hey, we're going to give you a $40 CPM, in some cases 20, but the goal there is to really kind of reduce those eCPMs so we can actually go out and say, we're going to extend this audience. It's not going to be some smoke and mirror kind of thing. It is the actual first party user that you are able to target.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting for somebody like Nick and myself who's got, I think you said a fuck-tonnery or whatever that word was, of inventory. And we're just trying to sell every impression, right? Because at the end of the day, if an impression goes unsold, we don't make money. So we're fine with selling at $1, $2, $3 rates. But I think it's interesting as we're kind of getting smarter about the digital advertising business, right? To package those things, and we can kind of, go into the second topic here with either one of you, with how are you selling data with PMPs, so private marketplace deals, and or solution-based selling to some of the larger brands or the larger trade desk out there.
Sure. So I think SheKnows' approach to all selling is solutions-oriented. So how can we create solutions that are based off of how our brand partners prefer to buy media? And what we found specifically over the course of the last year or two is that the shift is programmatic. They want to prioritize funneling as much media executions through these programmatic pipes as possible. So for traditional solutions that might have been categorized under a direct sale, so anything from takeovers, high impact placements, to contextual alignment with seasonal content. We have made all of those things available through the programmatic pipes in order to align with this shift in how brand marketers prefer to execute their media. So I think in terms of kind of where we're laser focused and how we're positioning ourselves within the PMP space, it's about creating those new solutions based off of how marketers want to buy their media.
Yeah, and that's kind of the stance that we take is we've taken care of, you know, engineering still matters in programmatic in terms of making sure that you've got a stance where if something does come in, that you'll be able to handle it, whether it's through data or a custom format, so you can execute on that. Because, I mean, we do see the trend that brands are moving programmatic buying in-house, but we also see it out of our agencies as well. There's still a lot of interest in takeover and high-impact formats, and even with some of the policy changes that have come down from Google and the better ad standard, we're still seeing probably even more demand than we have for some of our higher impact programmatic units.
So that kind of is good because it relays into my next topic around kind of control, brand safety, you know, not letting all the belly fat shit ads come through, right? Like, you know, it's like, what's your level of, you know, where do you stop? Where do you put the brakes on as far as what you allow on your sites? I mean, for us, I tend to lean towards give me the money, right? Like, if you pay me, I don't care what it is, right? It could be in Spanish, it could be in German, it doesn't matter to me. But our users every day don't want to see that shit, right? Like, and so we got to play that card with the content team and the product team because they're always bitching about something, right? Like, we literally pay your salary, right? I mean, honestly, we do. Like, we keep the lights on. But at what point do you have that breaking point to say, all right, enough's enough. We can't run the belly fat. We can't run, you know, the sex ads or the weed ads or, you know, whatever it might be, right? And, you know, at what point do each one of your guys' companies have that threshold to say enough's enough, right? And keep or take back your brand, take back the control of, you know, your audience, right? Is that?
Well, I think for us, there's a little bit. I mean, of course, we're under revenue pressure and like anyone else, but ultimately, you know, whatever you have on your site, and it goes beyond programmatic advertising, any sort of widget, any sort of content recommendation, it all reflects back on the content.
Like, you already have an outstream unit, you don't need another outstream unit,
right?
And another content rec.
And it all reflects back on the user experience and how you're respecting your users. And so if you've got you know, one thing that we're looking at and we're diving deep into at McClatchy, and there's a role with programmatic in this, is looking at personalized experiences. And do we display things, whether it be a mix of, you know, a different ad map or a different content recommendation or content teaser to keep somebody on our site, if they're part of a different audience segment that we identify, and we're actually getting fairly good at statistically kind of pulling that stuff out. We see a much different behavior out of our regular, and I wouldn't call them loyal, but semi-loyal or semi-loyal users that come to our site, and we see a completely different set of behaviors out of somebody that is getting referred off of Google or Drudge into our pages that, you know, we may only see once every 6 months or lifetime. And so it's interesting because that all plays back into kind of what you allow. I mean, we take a pretty, I would say, somewhat liberal stance. I've been doing this for 4 years. I'm fairly well connected and listening to what my editorial teams are saying. We use a lot of tools as far as reputation management to kind of monitor what's going on for people commenting on our advertising that's running on our site, which has been helpful too. And so we're able to spot some of those ad quality issues a lot faster than we ever have before, and be able to respond to them. You know, we do have a doomsday scenario plan where you know, where if something is really going wrong with the network, and this is probably something you should review with all your programmatic partners. If something goes down, you know, what are the next steps that you take to address those? And we've not had to invoke that very often, but a lot of times it's been really helpful, especially on weekends when you're skeleton staffed, to be able to kind of refer to those procedures and get it done really quickly if something does come up.
I think, again, we're a different beast just because we're B2B, and I suspect we're probably like a lot of people out here, which is if we allow, you know, some of the garbage ads to come into sight, we are going to lose credibility with our audience, and we're going to lose the subscriber base. For us, the email address is actually the most important thing, and then, you know, capturing additional data. So we have a specific way that we onboard audiences, which is to, you know, first capture that email address and then get them to progress further by giving us more data, and whether that's us targeting them with additional content and that kind of thing. The email really becomes the priority, because what we're able to do with that email is then match those users out into the universe so that we can do audience extension. And that's been a huge play for us, because I can't underestimate, like, for smaller publishers in the room, which I know there are, we just don't have those billions of impressions that we can play with in the sandbox. So for us, it's really about, you know, the data. We're sort of like a who's who on the sponsorship board here. I mean, we have a relationship with Parsley, PoundSex. We work with groups that go through LiveRamp. We've got a partnership with Oath. We use Social Flow to go find those first-party users out on Facebook and Twitter. So programmatic for us is not, we don't look at it as just a separate entity of our business. In fact, and I know we're going to talk about the sales kind of, you know, portion of this, but we look at the sales entity as saying you have to have a relationship with that brand. If you have a relationship with that brand and you sell a programmatic deal, you are going to get the commission on that deal. And we broke down those barriers quickly with the sales team to say, we want to incentivize the sales team to go make these deals. But we don't really look at them as one-off. We do have one-off deals, but the goal for us is to say, how is this part of a larger package? And I just think as publishers, right, we can either allow our inventory to be considered remnant and or commodity-based, or we can control our data. And by controlling our data and having a story that we can take out to our advertisers and use programmatic as a tactic, you know, native is a tactic to distribute branded content. Programmatic is a tactic to connect your advertiser with that audience. And the more that we are able to capture with data, and that's why everything, you know, we have shifted from calling ourselves a publisher to a performance media platform. And that's how we talk about ourselves to our advertisers. The more we capture data, the more we hygiene data, the more insights we have about those user base that are coming in, the better armed we are to go out to our advertisers, package those audiences up, again, into those very specific segments that they're looking to reach. And what that does is it gives us a no-waste scenario. We are not spraying and praying. You're not getting remnant inventory. You are literally getting that first-party user that you are looking to reach that is in market. That is our story as we go out to market. Now, the more we do that as publishers, the less we take control away from the ad tech stack, and the more we put it into our own hands as publishers. This is our audience, we're packaging that audience up, and we're selling that audience. So we can't get away with the belly fat ads. The second a belly fat ad comes onto American Banker, the second we are going to lose, you know, subscription bases, everything else, and the second we are going to plummet in terms of, you know, that model. So we have dabbled in looking at things like luxury brands and luxury goods because we have a very powerful audience. So the Rolexes of the world, the, you know, high-end travel, we're experimenting with that in the programmatic space and PMP deals. But again, they're coming in and saying we want a $4 CPM, and we're saying that's great, but it's a $75 CPM. So, you know, it's kind of put our head seller in, you know, kind of in a bind, because he's looking at it from a traditional standpoint, which is just sell all that inventory. And we're sort of putting the brakes on and saying, no, it's actually got to be relevant to the audience. Because if it's not relevant to the audience, we lose that audience base, and that's our, you know, that's our bread and butter.
I think, you know, programmatic has definitely evolved from its bottom feeder reputation that it's had in the past. And again, it's specifically within the lifestyle space. You know, our biggest categories are CPG, auto, retail, and this is their preferred way to purchase media. So we really value and showcase that at SheKnows we have very, very valuable audience segments that these key retailers, these key auto manufacturers, these CPG companies need to reach in order to continue to move their business along. So we definitely have a tight control over our private marketplace business, making sure that we're placing a value on these desirable audience segments, as well as making sure that we're continuing to invest in our own environments or within our own content, so that when our users come back to these environments, that our ad partners want to be able and feel comfortable surrounding the content for why they return to our platform. So to your point, we definitely stay away from any of those kind of belly fat, acai berry diet ads, and really
the
focus,
Rubicons of the world.
and really focus on our core business as to, you know, why our users ultimately come back to the SheKnows platform, and creating a really contextual environment for our brand partners to take advantage of within the private marketplace.
Cool, cool. So we started talking about a little bit about, you know, the sales side of the thing, right? So I think, you know, as a programmatic person, I mean, you basically have to be a jack of all trades. You got to wear a lot of hats. You know, I've certainly worn my fair share of hats over my 15-year-ish career. You know, I've sold air. You know, that for those out there, that's radio. You know, that old media. Yeah, NPR, right? You know, so you know, I've sold air. I've done the marketing thing. I've done sponsorships. I've done promotions. I've done a little bit of this and that. And you know, as a programmatic person now, not only are you like, you know, pulling levers operationally, working with tons of different vendors, but on the sales front, you know, all of our organizations have direct salespeople, probably most like all of yours, whether it's one person or 10 people or 100 people. You know, getting the traditional salesperson, doesn't matter really what it is, but getting them to sell programmatic and to educate them, you know, can be a challenge, right? You know, how do you dress up a piece of garbage, essentially, in programmatic, or what, you know, we consider remnant, right? That's kind of like what they think, like, oh, that's just garbage inventory, how do, you know, but, oh, wait, it actually means something. There's actually real dollars tied to it. So how do each of your organizations, and I can even touch on ours, but how do we all kind of educate the salespeople so when they're calling on either the OMDs or the local agency in their market, well, I mean, well, for us, for like the local media, you know, you got the local, like I live in Cincinnati. There's a big agency called Empower, right? You know, they do some nice brands, like the Meyer company, the grocery store chain, right? You know, but like, how would I have a local seller sell to an agency in a local market if they don't know shit about programmatic, right? So for us, we're just getting into it, right? Like it's teaching them about data, teaching them about how we can track people, buying an audience and not necessarily a widget on a page, right? But it's how to package the rates. They don't know how to sell it, right? Like for me, we try to sell the inventory, right? We'll negotiate any dollar as long as you're going to spend money. But you know, to arm a salesperson, what does it take? How do they do it? What's the execution like? How do we pay commission? Everything kind of around that. So I don't know whoever wants to go first to approach that.
So we're a 165-year-old company, and very much a legacy company. But we're also you know, very much like the gentleman from Hearst was describing yesterday, somewhat decentralized, and we have you know, maybe as many as 1,200 digital salespeople across the country. And you know, being a legacy business, you know, we knew we had to jump into it, and we had to start somewhere. And so we did something that was actually fairly easy. We distributed little cards that said, if you come across these keywords, and it contained words like PMP, it contained things like RTB, programmatic, and there may have been maybe a dozen or so of them. If you come across these, you know, first of all, don't panic, but give us a call, and we'll walk through it. And so very much it was bringing kind of the operations and the programmatic operations team into those conversations early on, so we kind of knew what we were jumping into, and from there we started to see salespeople in pockets start to get more comfortable with it, to the point now where some are able to sell it on their own, and it's part education, but it's kind of you know, also, you know, when it comes to programmatic sales, and being a legacy company, like I said, you know, you kind of have to start somewhere.
For us, specifically with our key accounts, I think programmatic has always been, to some extent, always a part of the conversation. Previously at SheKnows, we had a team of 2 or 3 who led the charge on programmatic sales. And in 2018, we actually transitioned to a 360, or what we refer to as a stack seller system, whereas each one of SheKnows sales reps are responsible for programmatic and direct goals. And again, I think this is a direct correlation to specifically the lifestyle space and how our top brands are approaching media. From what we've found with our conversations, whether it's dealing directly with the brands, working with the agencies, and working with the agencies' programmatic counterparts, programmatic and setting up a PMP, that planning process has evolved so much. It's no longer, oh yeah, you know, set up a PMP, Kate, we'll see how it goes. It's very much following and starting to follow suit more of a traditional planning process where they want to know why your platform, why your property would be relevant for this initiative. Do you have the right audience index? What do you cover editorially? So on and so forth. Very much, again, from a more traditional planning perspective. So it was our approach to make sure that our sales force was fully equipped to be able to plan and execute our clients' programs from start to finish with programmatic, direct, content, influencer events, and being able to have kind of one united force approach that.
So you're complementing each sale with a programmatic piece.
Absolutely. I think, you know, right now what we found more often than not are a hybrid approach. So brands want to take advantage of any execution they can through the programmatic pipes. So if they want custom content, influencer marketing, and pre-roll, they want to know, Kate, what can I execute programmatically? Can I do pre-roll? Can I do, you know, distribution units available programmatically? So our planning process has definitely evolved to align with this new approach and how programmatic plays a role into that. From an education standpoint, I think it's like anything in our industry, it's ongoing. I think, you know, every day something changes, so it's really important for, you know, our sales staff at SheKnows to continue to educate themselves and be accountable for their programmatic goals and know that, you know, it lies on them to make sure that they're staying up to speed with the trades. Internally, you know, we'll have, you know, different vendors come in and talk to us about, you know, what they're seeing in the marketplace. We have roundtable discussions every other week internally to talk about, you know, challenges they're facing in the marketplace, kind of share their experiences to, again, continue to educate each one of us about, you know, what's working and what's not, and kind of keep that that feedback loop going.
So will you comp a salesperson differently on programmatic versus a traditional sale, or comp them the same, or is it a percentage bucket?
We have individual goals, so every sales rep at SheKnows has a programmatic goal, and they have a direct goal. So those are comped pretty much the same as they would. It's only for private marketplace, so OMP is separate from that, so the sales reps are not compensated based off of, you know, if Geico were running a ton of inventory in the open marketplace.
And it's just on their list.
Yeah, they're not getting that.
I've got Ford.
Right. There's an opportunity
everybody
for you to move,
right.
You know, to get Geico to transition them to the private marketplace, and, you know, that's a great strategy, and
right.
they'll be compensated on that. But yeah, we treat programmatic and direct the same.
Cool, cool.
One other thing that I think that you mentioned is, as far as training, you've got a newsletter that you send out every week too, and that's something that I took away from our conversation last week and said, okay, team, I actually worked on it yesterday.
Oh, good.
Let's get a newsletter out so we're discussing those trends with our sales team and keeping it top of mind.
Yeah, the programmatic roundup has been really successful, just to, again, keep that data sharing going. It's a great way for people to recap or be able to reference kind of key trends or updates that we're working on for our programmatic offerings. We cover it at our weekly sales meeting as well. But yeah, the newsletter has been really exciting and something that seems to be catching on. So I'm happy to hear you're doing it.
That's internal. That's internal to your sales teams.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, we do like a monthly similar one. Like we just kicked one out for the whole GDPR or GDPR, right?
GDPR.
So many acronyms. But yeah, just educating them, and then it's good to do the newsletter thing because the local sellers out there, they can kick it off to their agencies or their media buyers at their respected companies, and it's good to just keep them in the loop that way. Even if it doesn't mean anything to their business, they're like, oh, it's just a sales tactic, right? It's hey, there's open communication here. I'm trying to help educate, right? But it's great to do that internally all the time. So if you want to add some more to that.
Yeah, I mean, we came from print public. We're a legacy, company as well. I mean, we were originally Thomson Reuters, all of that, and so we had a bunch of print salespeople that were used to taking people out for steak dinners and shaking hands and saying, "You want your, full page spread," and they banked, just millions of dollars on that. Now, they have great relationships, so you don't want to destroy the fact that they've got these really, really, really great relationships, which is, one of the key pieces to the B2B space, right? You've got to have those relationships. However, you deal with a lot of print salespeople that are now being told, hey, you've got to go learn all the acronyms, and you've got to be able to speak about data, and you've got to be able to speak about programmatic in an intelligent manner to an agency, by the way, that's going to eat your lunch with questions. That becomes problematic. So we had originally started off doing like the Leslie Laredos of the world, everything else, and training, and that actually was good just to kind of get people their feet wet in terms of what programmatic is. But even during a lot of that training, you see them their eyes are glazing over and they're sort of thinking about their next sale, which is what you want, right? So we did a few things. One, we brought in a sales enablement position. And I think this is a really big key for a lot of organizations because sales enablement, their whole goal is to just keep up with the training and make sure that they are not only putting out the the monthly newsletter, but they're also just sitting one-on-one with these salespeople and making sure that they understand what's being asked of them and sort of what these technologies are. That role has been great. What we've also done is we onboarded a platform called LearnCore. LearnCore is a learning-based technology that essentially it allows us to kind of do like mini little web seminars. And what we do is we just do training sessions, and they're in pretty like brief kind of snackable kind of format. But the salespeople are forced to log on, they are forced to go through the training, and they are forced to take quizzes and at the end. And if they miss any of the questions, they have to literally go back and take the entire course all over again. They can't do that during the day. They have to do that after work, and that is required of them. And that's actually been really great just to kind of get them, because our goal is not to say you're never going to be an expert. You're just not. You as a salesperson, they've got too much in their head. So, we don't want them to be experts on that. So I used to call myself the salesperson for salespeople because I was getting pulled in like 1,000 calls, right, to go talk about these. And that's not, realistic either. So the third piece that we did is we onboarded a guy, Matt Levine, and he had actually come from like Xaxis of the world and that kind of thing, and he had a ton of programmatic as well as digital selling experience. We onboarded him. And he's been awesome for the organization as well, because what he does is he's actually directly tied to the sales team. So we have the sales enablement, we've got the LearnCore, and then we've got Matt. So whenever they're having larger sort of programmatic discussions, they pull Matt into the conversation, and he's the one that is helping to kind of drive those conversations. So the whole purpose of Matt, though, is not to be the programmatic sales guy. Right? He's not taking away commissions. The second you take away commissions from salespeople, the second they aren't going to sell it, they're going to get terrified of it. They're going to say, programmatic's trying to destroy my business, and you guys are trying to put me out of a job, which is all bullshit, but that's how they think.
That's why I love Clear Channel.
So that's why we said, like, his goal is to help you close business, but you still own the relationship, you still get the commission, and much like you guys, we treat that commission as any other direct sold kind of campaign. Don't put the fear barrier in front of them. Allow them to make money off of it, and it will sell.
Cool. I think we got about maybe 5 minutes left. Are we at 11:45? Is it? Time check, anybody? No? I don't know. Anyways, you know, we could probably talk all day, but I think we got like 5 minutes left maybe. So any questions? Okay, so yeah, there we go. Any questions? Sure.
Hold on.
Yeah, Greg Morrow from Ranker. Do other of you guys commission on OpenRTB, or are you guys considering commission on OpenRTB?
I'm against it, and the reason why is we've got OpenRTB exchanges that transact, you know, upwards of, you know, $300,000–400,000 a month. How do you commission fairly against that when it doesn't really require a sales relationship? It really requires more of a day-to-day technical relationship out of our engineering team. And also, you know, we do check in with some of our larger partners every week, and some of our smaller partners every 2 to 3 weeks. Just check in, see what's going on, if anything's new, raise any issues. And it's really just not something that we feel is a sales function.
Same. There's definitely no plan to comp based off of the OMP, but we encourage our sellers to be aware of who's spending on our platforms in the OMP, because it's a great prospecting tool to see, well, clearly there's some interest in our inventory. So to use that as more or less as a launch pad to start more strategic conversations with those brands and try to encourage them to transition their business over to a private marketplace and grow it from there.
We do, but the money that we are dealing with in that space is not probably what what you guys are dealing with. So we do, and mostly because we have very strict rules about who can advertise on our site. So you know, we do blacklist and everything else, and we're very stringent on that. But you know, if a MetLife wants to come in, you know, on an open rate, then we'll take that business, but we do still commission the salesperson. But again, I think we're a little bit different than
Tier 3 money. That's the way I approach it. So if it's tier 1 and they got a direct relationship, we'll pay them. But if it's something coming down, you know, down the funnel, we won't. I don't know if we got time for one more or not.
Yeah. Do you have any? I have a couple. I wanted to ask about GDPR, and if any of you are seeing any impact from it, or have a sense of or expectation of any impact from GDPR across the in the programmatic space for you.
Yeah, at least for us, I mean, we're local media in the United States, so it's less than 1% of our inventory. I mean, we opted in on the Google thing, and I think we're going to approach it. I think there's the California Act might be coming out. We've got a lot of large properties in California, but that'll be voted on maybe either this November maybe, or maybe next. I think it's this year. But anyways, doesn't affect us much. Solely United States, but I don't know. You guys probably have, you know, a lot of international traffic, so.
Yeah, we have, I mean, we're dealing with global corporations, you know, specifically an American Banker and some of these others. So, you know, the biggest challenge for us with GDPR is it's not, if somebody, an EU resident comes and lands in the United States and they're surfing on your site, right, you don't have to worry about compliance. But if one of our US, you know, citizens goes over to the EU and starts actually surfing our content, which they do, we have to be very, very, very cognizant and aware of GDPR. So we've brought in a partner just to kind of help us, and they actually did a analysis across the company. So we had every single line of business and business unit had to go through and take a quiz and say, how compliant are we, which was pretty much in the gutter, which most people, but what they did say is you guys are way ahead of the curve because you're actually doing this, which I thought was kind of funny. But you know, we do a ton of demand generation. We do a ton of, you know, obviously, you know, just direct sold advertising. But again, because we're dealing with these global corporations that are coming in from the EU, it very much impacts us, and we're hyper aware of it.
Minimal impact on our end. Majority of our traffic is U.S. and Canada, so it hasn't had a huge impact on our business to date.
Yeah, our exposure was in the 4 figures. I mean, it was minimal for us.
And then I wanted to draft off of something you addressed earlier, and that's user experience. And are you measuring for user experience in any way? I mean, Marcus, you said that, you know, you lose subscribers if you gunk up the page. Do you know that? Do you have metrics against that? Do you know, Nick, you mentioned that you're being careful about user experience. Is there some metric against which you're understanding how changes in a page are actually impacting return rates or anything that quantifies this?
It's probably the one thing that is the most difficult to measure, and I don't think we're even close to it. Myself, I'm in our analytics software every day, if not every hour, keeping an eye on that, looking at what the chatter is out, through reputation management channels. It's just too difficult to measure quantifiably across such a massive audience. What your user experience is. And we kind of look at one initiative that we've really hit hard in the last year is on our page speed. Happy users are if the page renders in view as quickly as possible, we kind of assume there's happy users. We do know there's trouble spots, but it is fairly difficult for us to measure. And I would consider even our experience isn't perfect, but when you continue to see double-digit traffic growth year over year, and I know that's not a perfect measure either, it kind of makes it difficult to quantify exactly what is your user experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all goes back to the user experience. And I mean, we live and die by being able to cultivate and sustain desirable audience segments for our advertisers. So we know that, cloudy and congested pages on our sites don't yield a great experience for our users. So I think editorially, they have a very heavy hand in terms of, making sure that they're guiding that user experience and making sure that it's optimal while still allowing for, the necessary inventory there. But yeah, I think it's finding that balancing act of making sure that you're providing a strong user experience, but also making it available that you'll have premium inventory to sell across.
And on the flip side, you've got an engagement measurement, which John Avalon, who was here last year, talked about a little bit how the Daily Beast was looking at, and I think he was probably the closest from everything I've heard to actually pulling out an audience engagement measurement from his audience.
We have a data analytics team that sits in-house, and they are constantly mining not only GA and Parsley to identify sort of trending topics as well as looking at time spent on page, everything else. That's one side of it. Specific to the programmatic discussion, what we found is if we run non-endemic ads, our customer services actually are our best judge of that. We experimented with some non-endemic ads, and our phones lit up off the roof. Like you would not believe. And they said, I'm paying for this, I'm a subscriber, why are you serving me this garbage? So we have to be very, very aware of it. That customer service line, actually in that front, is our best course of action. So there was such a blowback, because we ran basically a car ad, in American Banker. And there was such a blowback by that user base that we had to cease and desist, like sort of all non-endemic advertising. So that's how serious they took it. Now keep in mind, these are paid subscribers, so they have certain expectations. Some of our other properties, the phones will light up a little bit, but if it's a non-paid, I think we have a very different kind of, I would say, blowback than if you were a paid subscriber. Those paid subscribers, they have very serious expectations. And for us, we have to tread lightly with that because, again, it impacts our business very severely.
Kate is going to be leading the roundtable on this topic in about 15 minutes. Jason, panel, thank you very much.